It was a crisp Tuesday morning around 6 a.m., the kind of cold that hits you right in the bones when you step outside, and there I was in my bathrobe, clutching a steaming cup of coffee, burning my hand just a little, but I didn't care. I was staring out at the backyard, trying to wake up, when the unmistakable roar of an excavator tore through the quiet morning. There was a screeching sound of hydraulics, followed by the loud, sharp cracks of wood splintering and snapping. The sound was like gunshots echoing in the silence of the neighborhood. And just like that, in 40 minutes it was gone. My cedar fence, the one I'd spent 3 weekends building board by board, post by post, was completely torn down. Right there, standing on my property line, was Constance Whitfield Drake, the HOA president. She stood there with her pearls, her lipstick in perfect shape, and a smug little smirk on her face as if she'd just won the lottery. And she just watched silently, enjoying the destruction of something I had put so much time into. It was clear she thought she had me cornered. But here's the thing, she had no idea what was coming. I didn't cry to lawyers or wait around for months. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my tools and decided that I would build something bigger, stronger, and far meaner. A fence that they wouldn't be able to tear down, not without a fight. A steel monstrosity that couldn't be touched by any contractor or bulldozer they sent my way. So what would you do if someone demolished something you worked so hard to build? Would you just stand by? Drop a comment and let me know what your worst HOA horror has been. Where are you watching from? But before we dive into that, let me take you back. Let me tell you where all of this started. This wasn't just about a fence, it's about my family's history in Harlan County. You see, my grandfather Wendell Pewitt bought the land back in 1971. 2.5 acres just outside of Nashville on the edge of what was then a remote area. It felt like a piece of our world away from all the noise. He built the house himself, mixing concrete in a rented drum mixer, while my grandmother handed him boards. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. 3 bedrooms, a root cellar that still smells like clay and old apples. It was home. And then it was my dad's. And when my dad's knees finally gave out, it became mine. I'm Garrett Pewitt. I'm 53 years old. I spent 22 years as a pipe fitter and then 8 years running a small welding fabrication shop out of a barn on the back of my property. I'm not a confrontational guy. I pay my bills, keep my yard clean, wave at the neighbors. But the neighborhood had changed. In 2018, the Sycamore Ridge HOA was incorporated, swallowing up our little patch of land as part of a bigger zoning deal. We had no say in the matter. Our property was suddenly subject to their rules, their regulations, their CC&Rs. That's covenants, conditions, and restrictions for those unfamiliar. And they were written by a company called Vantage Community Solutions. You'll want to remember that name. Constance Whitfield Drake, the HOA president, had moved into one of the new McMansions in the newer part of Sycamore Ridge. She was probably in her mid-50s, immaculate in a way that suggested a lot of time and money spent maintaining that effortless look. She was involved in 2 local charities, went to every county meeting, and had the personal cell phone number of the local code enforcement officer saved under Dennis Fast Response. But there was something more. Within 18 months of joining the HOA board, she had quietly restructured the architectural review committee so that she was the sole signature required for approving or denying any exterior modification. And I didn't know it at the time, but she was about to mess with the wrong person. The story goes back to my fence. Over the years, the HOA's landscaping contractors had started using a gravel road on the south side of my property to cut through to the newer section. And every time those trucks rolled through, it chewed up my yard, threw gravel into my garden beds, and once even clipped the corner of my chicken pen and scattered my hens across half an acre. So I built a cedar fence 4 feet high, pressure-treated posts, solid construction. Took me 3 weekends with my retired neighbor Dolph Ferris helping me set the posts on the last day. We wrapped it up with a cold beer and watched the sunset, turning the wood a rich orange. It was a good fence. I submitted the architectural review form the following Monday. 10 days later, Constance denied it. Her reason, unapproved material. Cedar not compliant with community aesthetic standards. I appealed. She denied it herself. No surprises there. And then the contractor showed up to tear it down. That was when I made 2 decisions. First, I was going to document everything. And second, I wasn't going to say a word to Constance until I had something worth saying. I filmed the whole thing. The sound of the excavator, the splintering of wood, the crunch of gravel under the contractor's boots. The crew chief kicked one of the broken posts into my tomato bed, crushing what was left of a late-season Roma plant. He looked at it, looked at me, shrugged, and kept working. I kept filming. Later, I headed to the county recorder's office and pulled every document on file for the Sycamore Ridge HOA everything. I paid $14 for the copies, spent 2 hours squinting at tiny print under flickering fluorescent lights. I also filed a property damage claim with Vantage Community Solutions requesting reimbursement for the fence materials, $847.60, itemized down to the penny. I sent it certified mail with a return receipt requested. And that's when things started to heat up. Constance sent me a letter 8 days later claiming the removal of the fence had been authorized under the CC and RS and no reimbursement was owed. The letter was co-signed by 2 other board members, Bradford Sutton, who owned rental properties in the new section, and Miriam Goss, who was stuck on the board but had been trying to resign for a year. I wasn't done yet. That same day, Dolph knocked on my back door. He'd been doing some digging of his own and came armed with a photocopied plat map. The service road the HOA contractors had been using. It wasn't a community easement. My grandfather had made an agreement with the Beckford family back in 1974, but that agreement had expired in 2009. The HOA had been using the road without any legal right to do so. I didn't make any noise about it. I didn't rush to call a lawyer. But I did do one thing. I marked the road with orange safety fencing just inside my property line and put up a sign that said private property. No trespassing. Road use agreement expired 2009. And that's when Constance called. She didn't like that one bit. 2 days later, she filed a complaint with the county code enforcement office calling my safety fence a hazard and a non-compliant temporary structure. Then she called an emergency board meeting and pushed through a resolution declaring the service road a community thoroughfare, arguing that 6 years of unpermitted use had created a de facto easement. She went door to door painting me as the villain who was blocking contractors and delaying landscaping. The county code enforcement officer, Dennis, showed up at my gate. He had a clipboard and a look that told me he wasn't thrilled about being there. But when I showed him the plat map, he left without filing anything. That's when I realized Constance had underestimated me. She was used to dealing with people who just rolled over. But I wasn't going to do that. It wasn't just about the fence anymore. It was about standing up for what was mine. And I was ready to fight.